Oh,
And I'll go ahead and let you start whenever you're ready.
all right, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for being so flexible. I'm Angie Jones. I'm the head of developer relations. Uh-oh.
If anybody has, if can everyone please mute? Let me go ahead and mute this person.
All right. Testing, 1, 2, 3. All right, perfect. I'm Angie Jones. I'm the head of developer relations at TBD, which is Block's newest business unit that's focused on decentralized identity and technologies. I wanted to talk about the web today. So the web was invented to decentralize communications, right? The ethos was anyone can publish any information to anyone in the world without the approval of any central entity. The web totally revolutionized how we interact with each other. However, it's missing a key element, an identity layer. So applications that require user accounts have to collect our data in order to persist our content with it. Major powerhouses such as Google and Facebook have tried to help alleviate a lot of this by enabling us to sign up for applications and authenticate through their services. And while this has been super convenient, we have little power over our information. What if we could own and control both our identity and our data across the web? This is possible with Web 5. Web 5 embraces the convenience of the account models that we see today, but it also restores control back to the users. This platform enables developers to build decentralized applications while abstracting away a lot of the complexity of doing so. So there are 3 main pillars of Web 5. All of them are based on open standards. I know you all have heard about a couple of these, at least this week. We have the decentralized identifiers, verifiable credentials, and then also decentralized web nodes. Now, this one may be newer, so I'll spend some time there, but I'll also briefly explain the other ones in more detail, especially how we're utilizing them. So the identifiers that we know and use today are owned by some intermediary, right? That could be the government, it could be a company or an organization. For example, my email address is an identifier that's associated with me, but it's owned by Google. My Twitter handle, also an identifier that's associated with me, but that's owned by Twitter. And while I can manage these identifiers to a certain degree, I don't own or control them. So before we can truly realize decentralized applications, we first need decentralized identifiers that we, the users, own and control. And this removes that dependency on centralized entities to authenticate and represent us across the web. Now, decentralized identifiers are a W3 standard. They're simply a long string of text with this standardized structure that consists of 3 parts. We have the scheme, which is DID. We have an identifier for a DID method, which usually resolves to some sort of CRUD operation. So create, read, update, delete. And then we have a GUID of the DID subject. So the DID subject is the person, the company, the object, the place that is being identified. So these are not limited to just people. They can identify anything. DIDs are the only part of Web 5 that's stored on a blockchain, and it's just this simple string, not people's actual information, because that would be pretty wild, right? What's great about having the standardized formatting for DIDs is that this works across multiple blockchains or no blockchain at all. So here are examples of DID on the Bitcoin blockchain. The second one is an example of a DID on Ethereum. And then we have the web DID that doesn't use blockchain. Notice they all use the same format, that scheme followed by the DID method and then the identifier. So a DID essentially acts as a URI that associates the subject of the DID with a DID document. And you can think of this as a key value pair where the DID is the key and the DID document is the value. DID documents are stored in some decentralized storage systems such as IPFS. All right, so the DID document is a JSON file. It describes how to interact with a DID subject. So it contains things like the DID's public keys, authentication, and verification methods. Okay, so that covers decentralized identifiers, which again, that's the first pillar of Web 5. The second pillar of Web 5 is verifiable credentials. So verifiable credentials are also a W3C standard. They work hand in hand with decentralized identifiers to enable trustless interactions, meaning two parties don't need to know or trust one another in order to engage, but claims about a DID subject can be verified. Let me show you with an example. So let's say that Alice wanted to apply for a loan and the lender needed to verify that Alice was employed, all right? So Alice's employer, Acme, could issue a cryptographically signed verifiable credential, which would be stored in Alice's identity wallet. And let's double click on that credential. I want to see what's inside of there. So we have the issuer as Acme, we have the subject as Alice. More specifically, we have their DIDs there. So both the company as well as the person, Alice, have DIDs, okay? We also have claims that the issuer is making about the DID subject. So Acme is claiming that this DID subject's name is Alice Smith and her salary is $120,000. That's all that the bank needs to know. So that's all that's being provided, no more, no less. That's the beauty of the verifiable credentials. It preserves some of our privacy and allows us to share only what's needed, right? Finally, on this VC, we have Acme's digital signature there. So upon the lender's request for a proof of employment, Alice could present them this verifiable credential that's cryptographically signed by both Alice as well as her employer, Acme, okay? This is an easy machine-readable way to share credentials across the web. The lender doesn't know or trust Alice, doesn't need to. They do consider Acme trustworthy. Like that's a trustworthy company and business. And because Acme has essentially vouched for Alice, they have distributed trust, okay? Now, last but certainly not least, the third pillar of Web 5 is decentralized web nodes. So today, centralized entities act as our data store, right? Applications, they hold all of our content and our preferences on their servers. Decentralized web nodes changes this by allowing us to decouple our data from the applications that we use. And instead, we can host our data ourselves in our own personal data stores. Blue Sky is a good example. It's a decentralized version of Twitter for all intents and purposes. That's in beta right now. But things like your posts and your connections aren't stored with the app. They're stored with you. So what this means is the following that you build up, all the amazing content you create is now portable. You can present it on any decentralized social media app that is interoperable with that protocol, not just Blue Sky. So if you wanted to start using like decentralized Instagram or decentralized TikTok, maybe you'll build these apps, right? You can bring your content and your followers with you and you don't have to start from zero. Now, your web node can hold both public as well as encrypted data. For example, in the case of like a decentralized Twitter, you want data like your tweets, your connections to be public, but things like your DMs, you will want to be encrypted. Also, your decentralized web nodes do not live on a blockchain because I'm sure you don't want your tweets and your DMs on a public immutable ledger. The web nodes are hosted locally and you can replicate them across your devices, your clouds, and all of that data will be synced. Now, I'm sure you're thinking, I don't know, Angie, people don't want to host their own nodes, and you're right. But as powerful as our phones and our devices are these days, it's not the daunting task that it once was. However, I'm sure that convenience will prevail, as always, and there will likely be vendors who are offering to host your web notes for you. The good part of that is that you can encrypt any private data in your web note. So unlike today, where cloud providers can read everything that's on your drive, with this, you can still maintain some privacy, even if you have your web notes hosted by intermediaries. Now, this is definitely a fundamental change in how we exchange data, but it's not a total overhaul of the web that we already know. So this works very much so like progressive web apps, but you'd add the Web5 SDK, and then applications are free to really go serverless because the data isn't stored with them. You're bringing your own data to the apps. All right, let's double click into how the decentralized web nodes work. So our web nodes are associated with our DIDs, and they're listed in our DID documents. So notice this section of the DID doc specifies service endpoints, and it provides URIs to the decentralized web nodes. So given an application has the address to, let's say, Alice's web nodes, they can send her a request for data. This snippet here represents a request from an application to obtain all of the objects within Alice's web node that follow the social media posting schema. The data within our web nodes, they're just JSON objects. They follow a universal standard, therefore making it possible for any application to discover and process the data in our nodes, given its semantic type. Okay, if this data is public, so like when they sent the request for the social media postings from Alice, if those postings are public, those objects will be automatically returned to the application. If the data is encrypted, the node owner would need to grant the application access to that data. Okay, so that covers the third pillar of Web 5. Obviously, all of this is pretty complicated, especially for non-technical users. And as I often remind builders in the space, decentralization alone is not a feature that the average user is requesting, right? So we need a simple, easy to use interface that will allow people to manage all of this and essentially make decentralization an implementation detail. So a well-designed identity wallet would provide ways to manage the data that's stored in your web nodes, manage your decentralized identifiers in the context in which they should be used, manage your verifiable credentials and your authorizations. So Web 5 enables developers to build decentralized applications on top of it. The individual components are open standards. They don't belong to any one company. As you've seen, multiple companies come before you this week and present on these topics. My team, TBD, is working on the implementation and the aggregation of components to make Web 5. And this is all open source. So you're free to use this as your foundation. Hopefully, those who are participating in the hackathon might give it a try. And that way you don't have to worry about this. You can focus your attention on what you really care about, which is your app, right? The sky's the limit to which you can build on this platform. I do have a couple of examples of what's possible. So no one likes recreating their music playlist over and over again for the various apps, right? Basically, whatever you already have right now, you kind of just stay there because the thought of like redoing your playlist and your favorite songs and all of this is just too tedious. With Web 5, you wouldn't have to worry about that. So in this scenario here, Spotify has access to write to Alice's decentralized web node. And so they write a new entry for a music playlist. Notice the schema there, okay? And then Tidal, which is another streaming service, they have access to read from Alice's node. So they can read the new entry that was added by Spotify. And now Alice has her playlist readily available on both of these applications. She's no longer confined to vendor lock-in. Okay. The ability to own my medical records, my gosh, this is something that I particularly look forward to. Within the last 5 years, I've lived in 3 different states, which means every time I move, I have to get a new set of doctors, right? And most of us have more than one doctor, right? I have my primary care physician, I have a dentist, I have a gynecologist, I have a dermatologist, like all of these various specialists. And so every time I move, I have to like reach out to each one of these doctors and ask them, can they send over my records to the new doctor? And I feel a bit helpless in this whole process, right? With Web 5, your medical records can be encrypted and stored in your decentralized web node. That way, you always have access to your complete medical history. In this example, Alice's primary care provider uploads her medical records to her web node. The records are encrypted, so no one has access unless Alice grants it to them, okay? Even without moving to a new state like I did, let's say Alice just gets, a couple of new specialists, or she needs to go, see someone, then Alice can grant them access. She can also give one of these doctors, like maybe her primary care physician, the authority to grant access to other doctors. That's up to her. All right. So I want to show you Web5.js. We do have a tech preview that we have released. So I want to show you like all of this in action with a live demo. Let me bring up my code editor. So I've already installed the SDK. It's just an npm install command. So I'm going to go ahead and import it. Can y'all see my code?
I'm seeing the screen that says web5.js. Is that what we're supposed to be seeing?
No. All right, let's see. Oh, it says paused. Okay, let's resume share. Let's do a new share then. All right. Okay, now you can see, right?
Yes.
All right, perfect. All right. Tech will not beat me today. Okay, so I'm going to import Web 5. And I can do this from TBD. Yes, exactly. Copilot is with me today. Perfect. So I've imported the Web 5 SDK. The first thing that I want to do is to say web5.connect. So this little simple command is very powerful. What it's doing is, if I don't already have a local decentralized web node, what this is going to do is create one for me. If I do have one, it's going to connect to it, right? It is also going to look to see if I have already established DID. If I do, it'll utilize that. If I don't, then it'll create that DID for me as well. So what this is going to return is both an instance of Web 5 as well as my DID. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and print the DID just so you can see it. All right. So let's run this. And boom, notice I have a DID here. It's just that simple. So I'm going to copy this DID. Notice that the DID method is ion. So that's the default with Web 5. We do also support the key method. So if you wanted to specify that, you could do so. I'm going to go to diffs, universal resolver. So let's paste this DID in here. So this is the DID that was created by Web 5, and notice I'm able to resolve it outside of the library. So this is a real thing, right? So here's my DID. We see the services, decentralized web nodes, the verification methods. Oh, let me make sure y'all see my screen. Yes, perfect. Also, I got my DID document here. So notice here, I have my nodes. So these were the 2 nodes that were automatically created for me by Web 5. Verification as well as authentication is present there, right? Now, I showed this to you outside of Web 5 because I just wanted you to see that it does exist, but I could resolve it here, right? So let's say that someone is like, I'm using Web 5 to build my app. I have a user that wants to use the app. They provide me with their DID. Then I can resolve their DID by just saying web5.did.resolve and pass in their DID. Okay. Given that, let's go ahead and print it out. Given that, I can have access to their DID document from within my code. So now I can get, their DWN URIs. DWN is decentralized web node. So let's run that again. Let me show you this resolution. Yes. So see here, we have a DID document here. Okay. Awesome. So
Angie, don't mean to interrupt, but somebody just popped in with the question.
All right.
They were asking, where is the private key in this example? And that would allow the user to prove control of their DIDs.
Let's go back to, so your private keys, they are stored within your DID. They're not going to be in the DID document, of course, right? So stored within your DWN. So you can pull that stuff out if you need to. With this DID, you can sign things and everything like that utilizing Web 5. So it'll do all of that behind the scenes, so you don't have to think about it. That's what I meant about abstracting away a lot of the complexity. I just don't want to think about that sort of stuff. I'll show you how to interact with the DWN, and behind the covers, you'll see how you won't see, but behind the covers, it's utilizing those private keys to sign things and stuff like that. If you want to dig more, I'll post everything in the Discord in the TBD ecosystem channel so that you can dig into the code yourself and see exactly how that's working. All right. So I want to show some CRUD operations with the DWN. So again, let's say that, you're building your application, a user comes to you and now you want to, create things in their storage. You want to read things from their storage, update and delete them. Again, Web 5 allows your application to go serverless. So I don't have to do any of this stuff in a database. I am doing it right there in their data storage that they provided me access to. So let's say we want to create a DWN record. The way that we'll do that is we'll say const record equals, and we'll say web5 dot DWN dot records dot create. All right. So inside of here, this object that we're basically sending a request. So we provide it with data, and this data can be just about anything, right? So this could be text, it could be images, it could be a blob, it could be, whatever. So you can store whatever you want in a decentralized web node. So I'm going to say, hello, Web 5. And then we provide a message object. Inside of this message, you can do things like the data format, for example. So I'm going to say, this is plain text. And that's it. I can close this out. What am I missing here? Oh, the colon. Okay. So this will write a record to the user's local DID. Whatever DID I have here, the DWN is going to write that record to the DWN that's associated with the DID, the local one. Okay. Now, again, with your DWNs, anything that I write there, you might want this to be synced across all of your replications of this, right? So my DWN, I'm doing this, I'm using this application on my phone, but I also have this synced on my desktop or whatever. So in order to do that, we'll just say await record.send, and we specify the DID. So what this is going to do, it's going to resolve that DID, it's going to find what are the DWNs associated with that, and this is going to then sync that across the different DWNs, that that are replicated here. Okay. Now I want to, let's go ahead and just print this out. I won't do it right here. We'll do it at the very end, but I want us to have a record of everything so you can see it in motion. So we'll say record created, and then let's put the record there. All right, cool. So that's creating. Now let's say I want to read, yes, read from the DWN. I can do that. Let's say record text equals await record dot data. So with this data property, notice here in the context, thank you, I can get a blob, I can get JSON, I can get text, I can get a string, right? So those are the 4 methods that are available to me. I know that this record is text, so I'm going to say text. Okay, and then let's go ahead and console log that as well. Perfect. All right, so we're doing CRUD operations. We've done create, we've done read. What's next? Of course, we're going to update. Look at Copilot, so smart. All right, so to update a record, we can say await record.update. And what you're going to pass here is the data. So what do you want to update that data to, right? Right now, we had it as hello web 5. So we can say something like hello again web 5, maybe. All right. And then I want to go ahead and console log that out. Yes, record updated. And I'm going to call this again so we get fresh data. So record.data.text. Perfect. All right. And then finally, yes, we're going to delete a record. So to delete a record, that's exactly right. We say await record.delete. And this is just going to return a status to us. So let's just say response, and then we'll print that out. Perfect. All right. So that is our CRUD operations. Again, you can do this. Did I show you? I want to show you here. I don't know if I said this or not, but right here, this is doing to the local DWN of whatever I connected to. But let's say we want to write to another DID, right? So I can do a recipient here. And it's basically just specify the DID of a recipient. So what this will do is write to that recipient's DWN, granted that I have access to it. The application has access to it. I can do that as well. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and run it. Let's clear this out. All right, beautiful. So notice, let's look at our console output. So we first created the record, and this is the record here. It has this Boolean is deleted flag. It has the author. So this is the DID of the person who wrote the record. It also has a target. This is the person that's receiving the record. These are the same DID because I'm writing to my own one, right? I didn't specify a recipient. And then we have the read. So we read that text from the DWN. And did I do a wait on update? I did. Okay, so it says this was pending. So this takes, I guess, a second or so. So I kind of didn't get that it's still pending. And then I guess by the time this happened, the delete, it did work. But yeah, so that was still like kind of working. It kind of, I went really fast, but yeah, you get the gist here. So that is Web 5 in a nutshell. in my opinion, this is pretty delightful to use. I didn't have to think too hard about, decentralization, and everything is just kind of done in the background for me. Okay. So there's many applications that can be realized by building on top of Web 5, right? We can enjoy the web the way that it was always intended to be, decentralized. All of this is open source. We welcome all of you to contribute to making the web that we deserve. You can find us at developer.tbd.website. We have links to our GitHub projects, our API docs, tutorials, if you want to check out the work or contribute to it. Hopefully, you'll feel compelled to try it out in this Did.Hack week. We have open job recs if anybody wants to come and work on decentralized technologies formally. And if you're a company here today who's trying to solve some of these same challenges or to make use of any of this, we're open for a collaboration as well. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Angie. That was a great presentation. And it looks like we already have a question that came in on the chat. Also, I'll encourage everyone here, if you have any questions, to go ahead and drop those in there, or you can also raise your hand in Zoom and I'll call on people. But this question is from Moises, who says, right now, Web 5 uses the private key, which I could use in a different device to manage the same DON. How could we restore the private key? I don't know if I got that right, Moises, or if you wanted to clarify anything.
Yeah, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
And actually, a person before me asked similar questions. Right now, Web 5 hides the management of the private key. If I wanted to use the same private key in a different device so that I can point to the same DON, how can that be done? If that makes sense.
Yeah, you wouldn't have to do that on your own. Like, you can definitely get the information out of I don't remember what call it is to get that right off the bat. But you can like retrieve that information. The thing is, you don't have to though. Like I said, like say your DWN is local on your phone, and then you also have one on your laptop. This stuff will just kind of sync together, so you don't have to manually like give me my keys so I can do something on my other device. It just kind of all works behind the scenes. But there is a way to export it. I just can't remember off the top of my head.
That's all right. If I may expand, I've seen examples of how protocols enforce access control lists. But what about like some sort of wallet that allows you to, fine tune or dynamically set access controls?
Exactly. So we want this to be really easy for people to use, like the end user, right? So we do have plans to create like an open source identity wallet. Of course, people will be free to like fork that and make their own versions of that. But we do realize that that's something that's pretty important so that I can manage this just from like the palm of my hands. I had something else. Oh, the protocol piece. So we do have that. I didn't cover that in this talk, but we do have, let me show you if I can, an example. Hold on. All right, I'm going to do another tab here. This is our site. If you go to docs, under Web 5, I think it's under learn. Yeah, protocols. So I'll drop this link. I'll be sure to remember to drop this link in the Discord, but we have a guide on how the protocols work. So just as you said, you can, as you're building your app, you can create a protocol that users can install in their DWN. So this determines like who can read and who can write and that sort of thing. So this one goes through an example of like a social media app and gives like, examples of like the types of things that would be in that app. And then also like who can do what. So if you want to go through that, that would be like really cool to do.
Cool, thank you.
Sure thing.
Okay, awesome. It looks like we have another question in the chat here, which is, do you know why TBD distinguishes between an identity wallet and any other type of wallet?
Yeah, mostly because what we're dealing with, like if you think of, I guess wallet in this space, you would think of something like an exchange or some sort of crypto wallet, and none of this has to do with tokens in any way, right? It's more so like managing your DIDs, your VCs, and your DWNs that holds your content. So who knows what we'll name it? We don't have a name yet. I'm just calling it identity wallet to basically get around any confusion so no one thinks that I'm talking about like crypto or anything.
Thanks, Angie. Love the presentation.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions from the room? The other thing I just want to mention is that there is a channel in our DidHack Discord for TBD. So if you need a moment to maybe review Angie's presentation and some of the resources and you have questions later, you can also ask those questions async in the TBD channel.
For sure. And I'll be sure to add some resources in there as well. Is there a concept of schemas for the records? I didn't see that. There is. Great question, David. So you can provide like a URL to your schema. Let me see if I can get up here. Let's go in the API docs. All right. So let's see if I can find a schema example. Anyway, I'll just kind of talk through it. So basically, we do not police the schemas, but you can specify a schema. So the way that we do that, you would have like a property for the schema. Let me see if I can find it. Sorry, I really want to show you. You can request, I mean, you can essentially say like schema as a field, and then you will provide a URL to a schema. So what we recommend is like schema.org. They pretty much have everything already covered. But if you wanted to make your own schema, host it somewhere and provide that URL to it, that's perfectly fine. What we don't do is validate at all. We don't validate the schema. We don't validate that any of the records adhere to the schema or anything like that. That is something that we leave up to the applications. Web 5 is unopinionated on that. We allow you to provide it, but we don't do any like validation of it. Oh, someone found it? Yay, thank you. Oh, it looks like you wrote your own one. Bank account. Yes, love it. Oh, that's so good. Thank you. Yes, perfect. So that's a good example of like creating some records, and you're saying that, okay, here's the schema. I'm following the bank account schema. Yeah, I love this protocol right there. It's providing that financial product. Yes, beautiful. I love it.
Another question there.
Sure. Do you have a suggestion for how to persist data that is meant to be published but lives in a DWN? I'm sorry, Ben, would you mind clarifying the question?
For example, if you've got a decentralized Twitter, all the tweets are meant to be seen by others, right? So the application has to persist that data somehow so that it can display it to other people. But if it's owned and stored in a DWN, are we just making a copy of that then?
No, please don't make a copy.
Right. So what's the suggestion for how to persist something like that?
That's an amazing question. And it's one of the problematic areas of the space, if I'm being honest. So we don't want an application to say, oh, well, let me make a copy of this, or like let me cache it, or let me put it in my database so I have it or whatever, because I'm basically granting you access to this data, but I want it to be in my control. I don't want you to have it and then start selling it. Now, there's nothing right now that we can do to prevent that from happening. So, I mean, you're working with the honor system, and that doesn't always work in our favor as the little people, right? Hopefully we are hoping that, there'll be, legislation or something in the vein of like GDPR or whatever that protects me. Like if I'm granting you access to my data, I'm not giving you rights to like copy that data or store it on your servers or anything like that. But that'll be a long ways out. So like, the basis of your question, I'm thinking, is like performance issues and things like that. Like say I'm doing a social media thing, I don't want to have to read from like 1,000 people's dawns in order to like create a timeline, if you will.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I honestly don't have like a super great reason answer for you. Like the team, we're aware of this and we're looking at ways of, some sort of like some sort of way of like making this a whole lot easier and performant. I don't have a good answer for you, if I'm being honest.
That's okay.
Yeah. If you have any ideas, I would love to hear them. And so with the team in our Discord. That's what I really love about the space. Like we, it's really open. We are, we're all trying to solve some of these same problems together. So hopefully, if not us, someone will come up with a solution. Again, this is a tech preview, so you're welcome to use it for like did hack, but don't take this and start like building your production apps with it yet. It's not quite ready for production.
Awesome. So any other questions? Oh, there's one came in. How do multiple users edit data?
Yeah, anyone who has like access to the DWN can do an update. So let's say I have my app and I am updating a specific record. Then I just in the code, I do like the update. You have your app and you also have access to update records in this person's DWN. You do the same thing, right? Yeah, no magic there.
Yeah. Any other questions from the room? Right. Okay, I don't see anything coming in at the moment. All right. So yeah, so I think we've come to the end here. I want to thank you so much, Angie, for joining us today. That was an excellent presentation. I will have the recording up in the Discord very soon. I'll also include the chat as well so people can see the questions.
Awesome.
And we have one more session that's going to be happening later today at 1 p.m. That's going to be Marcus Sabadello on DID resolution. That's 1 p.m. Pacific time. So I hope you guys could all join us. We're going to be recommencing back on Discord for that one.
Thank you all so much.
All right. Thank you. Bye,
Yeah.
everyone.